can instantly save hundreds of dollars on a new, roughly $1,400 USD gaming PC by breaking the absolute most sacred rule of computer building, using dual-channel RAM. That's right, we're diving into a hardware hack that completely defies decades of conventional wisdom. It lets you maximize your gaming performance while keeping your hard-earned cash exactly where it belongs, in your pocket. This solves a massive pain point for anyone trying to build or upgrade right now. I mean, DDR5 RAM prices are skyrocketing. We're talking between 150 and 200 USD just for a single 16GB stick of memory. And when the old rules dictate that you absolutely must buy 2 of those to make your system run properly, well, your budget gets destroyed instantly. But as we're going to see in this explainer, that old rule might actually be a complete waste of your money. Section 1. The single channel secret. The secret sauce to this entire money-saving strategy relies exclusively on a very specific line of processors. I'm talking about AMD's Ryzen X3D series, specifically chips like the Ryzen 5 7500 X3D and that massive Ryzen 9 9900 X3D. Now, these aren't your normal processors. They're a literal hardware hack that makes single-channel RAM, meaning just using one stick of memory, completely viable for high-end gaming. Historically, skipping dual-channel memory severely bottlenecked your gaming performance. It would literally starve your processor for data and ruin your frame rates. But the X3D series, it completely rewrites the rulebook. The new reality is that on an X3D CPU, one stick of RAM is absolutely enough to push incredibly high frame rates without those dreaded bottlenecks. But to really grasp why, we have to kind of rethink how a computer works. Section 2. The wallet and the bank. To make sense of this radically simple memory architecture, let's imagine our CPU is a little stick figure trying to make purchases. These purchases represent processing game data. Okay, so your SSD, your main storage, that's like having gold bars locked in a giant vault. It's super valuable, but to actually use it, our stick figure has to sell the gold and convert it to cash. It's a really slow process. Now your RAM, your main memory, is like having money in a bank account. It's a lot more liquid, sure, but our stick figure still has to walk all the way down to the ATM to get it, so it's still relatively slow. But the CPU cache, that is cash right in the stick figure's physical wallet. It is instant, immediate access. Now, normal CPUs have a very, very tiny wallet. Because of that, they're constantly running back and forth to the RAM bank to get more cash just to keep the game running. But AMD's 3DV cache technology, it gives the CPU a massive, wildly overstuffed wallet. Because these X3D chips hold so much data directly on the processor itself, the CPU almost never needs to visit the bank. And this explains exactly why your RAM setup suddenly stops mattering so much. Think of dual-channel RAM as a 2-lane highway to the bank, and single-channel RAM as just a 1-lane highway. Normally, a 1-lane highway is going to cause a massive traffic jam of data, but with an X3D processor, there is no traffic jam. Why? Because nobody's driving on the highway. The CPU already has almost all the data it needs to run the game right there in its oversized wallet. Section 3. Real-world gaming proof. Let's validate this metaphor with some hard, real-world data. We're looking at tests run with an RX 9060 XT and an RTX 5060 Ti GPU paired with these exact processors. Take Cyberpunk 2077, an incredibly demanding game. Running on ultra settings at 1080p with FSR enabled, the results are honestly shocking. Whether the system had 32 gigabytes of dual-channel RAM or just a single 16GB stick, the frame rates were identical. Exactly 138 FPS. And even more importantly, the 1% lows, which represent that annoying stuttering you sometimes feel during intense combat, they were virtually identical at 125 FPS. The single stick literally did not hold the system back at all. And it's not just standard shooters either. Take a notorious game like City Skylines 2. This game absolutely punishes CPUs because it has to track individual citizens. Well, in a city with a massive population of 500,000, the Ryzen 9 9900 X3D was pulling 160 watts of power and hitting 71 degrees Celsius. It was working incredibly hard, tracking 500,000 simulated lives. And it did the whole thing flawlessly. On a single 16GB stick of RAM, the CPU cache just absorbed all that complex physics and AI logic. And for the competitive players out there, tests in esports titles like Valorant easily pushed over 400 frames per second with absolutely stellar 1% lows. Again, entirely on single-channel RAM. That massive 3DV cache is doing all the heavy lifting, serving up the game's physics, AI, and environment instructions instantly. Section 4. When this trick fails. Now, as your guide through this explainer, I've got to give you a very crucial warning. This hack has definitive limits. Let's talk about exactly when breaking the dual channel rule will blow up in your face. If you use your PC for heavy productivity workloads, we're talking 3D rendering and animation, scientific data simulation, heavy video editing, massive file compression, or intense AI workloads, you absolutely still need dual channel RAM. In these scenarios, the data sets are simply too massive. They will overflow the CPU's wallet instantly, which forces the CPU to use the highway to the RAM bank. And if you only have a one-lane highway for these massive non-gaming tasks, you're going to hit a severe bottleneck. Section 5. The technical deep dive. For those of you who want to understand the nuts and bolts of how AMD's silicon actually achieves this wizardry, we have to clearly define what 3D V-cache is. This isn't just slightly better memory, it's a physical manufacturing marvel. It literally involves vertically stacking extra memory directly onto the CPU compute die. And what's really fascinating is that this technology actually originated in AMD's massive EPYC server processors. It was initially designed to handle insanely complex tasks, like scientific physics and aerodynamic simulations, way before it finally trickled down to these consumer Ryzen chips. 140. That is the staggering number of megabytes of total cache memory found on the Ryzen 9 9900 X3D. To put that into perspective, standard processors have a tiny, tiny fraction of that amount. Let's break down this architecture a bit more. The CPU is split into two core complex dies, or CCDs, with 6 physical cores on each. Now, you have your standard ultra-fast L1 and L2 caches handling the most immediate instructions. But the real magic happens at the L3 level. Out of that 140 megabytes of total cache, a massive 128 megabytes is dedicated L3 cache, specifically stacked using that 3D technology. This colossal L3 cache basically intercepts the game's physical environment data, entirely bypassing the need to constantly query the system RAM. So what is the ultimate, actionable takeaway from all this data? Well, if you're building a gaming PC right now and DDR5 prices are squeezing your budget, you can safely buy a single 16GB stick of RAM today, as long as you're using an X3D processor. You are going to get top-tier gaming performance immediately. Then you can seamlessly upgrade to dual channel later by just buying a second stick when prices finally drop, or if you decide to pivot into heavy video editing down the line. This entirely changes how we budget for a PC build. But it also leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. If simply stacking a massive cache on a CPU can render standard memory bandwidth largely irrelevant for modern gaming, what PC component will these massive physical caches make obsolete next? Will we even need traditional RAM for gaming in 10 years? It's definitely something to think about.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you in the next video.